What's up, everybody? I'm just gonna have like a water effect come out when I do this from now on, especially since the beard's no longer there to catch it. Um, what's
Goodness
up,
gracious.
what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Alternative Blacks podcast live on YouTube. Today we got a interesting conversation for you. We are going to be talking about PG Lang. We're going to be talking about more specifically the Light Phone 2 and how it relates to Kendrick Lamar. This is a really interesting article for me because I remember the Light Phone prototype when it first came out. It was something that I was very interested in. I remember a lot of the issues that were presented with this thing. So when we get into the conversation, I will talk to you more about that. I read the article and it still has me questioning some of the challenges that come with a Light phone.
Okay, because I have none of that context, so this is going to be
very
great.
Interesting thing. I was really interested in it, and we'll get into all that. But before we do any of that,
Charlie Day?
Yeah.
Beer. Oh, beer, not Charlie Day.
That's right.
That's right.
Beer.
All right. So,
Doing?
what am I drinking today, you might ask? Well, first of all, I'd like to give a huge shout out, since I was drinking this beforehand, to Paul of Nemesis, Renton, Pennsylvania, getting his own beer. And it's not just him either. He has a couple people around him, part of Nemesis that really make everything happen. But he's such like a spark plug for, like the streets, man.
I forgot I have his phone number. I actually need to reach out to him and just give him a congratulations on
that. Yeah. I mean, he like, if you want to talk about someone who's just like positive in the community, like he puts these things together. He's like only outwardly asked just for donations if you'd like once, and everything else has just been like, show up, we have t-shirts, we have businesses here to give you free food, come on a run, get fit with us, have fun.
Before COVID, he's gonna send me down to Granada to record a soccer tournament.
Crazy. Like that's crazy. He's such a good guy, and this couldn't happen for a better person in writing. This is exactly the type of thing. And then like this beer, and I think we should probably do like a little episode of it, or do it on one of the episodes and kind of talk more about it. But I just wanted to shout him out there.
Well, I mean, I need to do a lot of shit to catch us up, but we had made that connection with Chatty Monks when we were out at Fresh Fest, Barrel and Flow, and
Barrel and Fest.
Yeah, and so Chatty Monks is on our radar now. We got to know the people behind the barrels a little better, and I think that's something that's gonna be easily attainable. And so maybe it's something that we say, hey, maybe it's like closer to Thanksgiving or something, that we can put a date like in concrete to say, let's sit down, have this conversation, and just get this episode recorded.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. People behind the barrels, the conversation really flowed. It was just a great time. So the beer that I'm actually drinking on the episode, inspired by your recent travels, I picked up an Elder Pine. It is Asleep on the Forest Floor, hazy double IPA. This one is, let's see here, Simcoe Citra and Comet hops. Comet hops? Have you heard of Comet hops?
It's intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic hops.
Well, there's galaxy hops.
Intergalactic.
There's got to be a planetary hop out there. I feel like if there's a name for something, there's a hop named after it at this point.
Yeah.
Or there will be. This guy though is a hazy double IPA, 8.7%. Absolutely delicious. As you can see, it's got that nice color to it.
Yeah. I was at Longwood last week, and they were actually talking about what makes a hazy, and it was definitely a lot more complicated than when I usually. It's just unfiltered. But
okay, well, that's a conversation to have.
Yeah, definitely need to get into what makes things what they are a little more. That's something that I'm really interested in getting a better understanding of. He was the guy that worked for it's like something Finance is his last name, who works for Victory, that helps with a lot of the collaborations with Longwood's Gardens and the special beers that they make for them. But he's like one of like 22 master cicerones or something like that, like top tier, like 22 out of the world. So it's like crazy. Regardless how we feel about Victory and the beers that they make,
that's another conversation.
Yeah, outside of some of the ones that we love, they just haven't really blown me away as of late. So that's neither here nor there.
But it is in agreement with what I think, so that's where it is.
Yeah. Elder Pine, that I will be bringing a beer down later to discuss what I got there. But the one beer that I would like to highlight that I just took a sip of because I couldn't. I was at a wedding early as shit on a Sunday, and then had to get back home to like check on the dog. So we stopped on Elder Pine on the way back, and they had. I have never seen this, but they had an Imperial Rausch beer sitting at like 11%.
Now we're talking.
Oh my god, was it tasty! We got in, we smelled smoke. I guess it must have been like whatever like food truck that they had there. But we were trying to figure out what was the smokiness that we smelled in the building, and there was a Rausch beer. Like it must be the Rausch beer, and like we went for the Rausch.
Like there's a Rausch beer on tap.
Yeah, it smells like Rausch in here. Was not the case.
It was a thick mahogany.
Yeah, but it was delicious. We tried a couple different things before heading out, and then we grabbed this one Czech lager. So
Czech lager.
Czech dark lager. It's pretty good.
Czech dark lager. Okay, I like a good Czech dark lager.
I'm drinking the Oktoberfest from Dock Street. Just as my start off beer, I had grabbed a 4-pack of it on the way home because it's only $10 right now. So.
That's pretty good for a craft 4-pack.
Yeah. And I had
especially of a good beer, right?
Yeah, and I had a rough.
I mean, what do you?
So I needed it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like Dock Street.
I can tell your all your facial hair fell out.
It fell off. I was so stressed. That's actually what
I said. Stressed.
I said it fell off. You know.
You were just sitting there like all day like this, and when.
I said they stressed me out, and then I said that they just fell off. Like no, I said the dog licked it off.
That sounds painful.
Yeah, awful. But no, I shave the beard every November in honor of No Shave November or Movember,
right.
Which I learned this year. No Shave November is strictly focused on like prostate health versus Movember being a more encompassing men's health. So it's about suicide prevention, it's about prostate health, mental wellness and everything like that. So I do tend to like lean over to if I would like to donate to something, it would be to Movember. So I'll be running a campaign on my personal page to try to raise $100 by the end of the month. In support of Movember, which is like one of the few things that I walked out of college with the fraternity, really inspired and really enjoyed that initiative of donating and raising a cause towards that. So that's why I try to at least, if not financially, at least symbolically, I shave my beard every November in honor of that.
Good explanation, because like I think like Alyssa saw the post, like was it yesterday? And I'm never on social media, so I don't know anything about anything. Maybe I should get a light phone. Foreshadowing.
Good transition.
Yeah. No, but I was just like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because I've always, back at least into recent memory, like I've always thought of that as like, okay, I always know he actively participates publicly with it, like whether he's actually raising money or not, like it's always a public facing.
At least I'm raising like trying activity. To raise awareness in the very least. So, but no, you alluded to it perfectly. You might as well have a light phone for how active you are on social media and everything like that. So you sent me this article today, so I'm going to allow you to explain what we're talking about today.
Well, Kung Fu Kenny has Kung Fu. No, you know what it was? Honestly, was just, I don't know if you get these, but I just get random news article alerts, and it just happened to be one of those random news article alerts. I think it was either that or like on my phone, or it was on my work computer. If you open up like a new tab or something,
right? Like
it's the MSN, like is the stock page, and it just has random news headlines on it. And I elected just to keep that, just because it's interesting just to have like the news headlines like periodically pop up throughout the day when I'm opening up a new tab. And this thing just popped up that he's coming out, PG Lang inspired light phone 2, PG Lang light phone 2. This is going to have, it's Well, it's marketed as quote unquote just a phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And one, I really like that marketing of just a phone. One, because I always liked the Duclaw and their like their very minimalist beer series where they have it's just like a lager, American lager, and it's just called beer, regular beer, a beer that tastes like beer, or the cerveza, which is a Mexican lager that tastes like a Mexican lager, like just like they have a couple of those, and I don't know why, like just knowingly doing that, like with like the joke in mind, like I enjoy that. This obviously I don't think is a joke because if you've listened to Kendrick Lamar's most recent album, you can kind of tell this is where he's been at and kind of what he is trending towards in terms of trying to like shut himself off from social media and kind of pop culture, if you will.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised when I saw this. I was like, okay, he would do something like this. But this phone will have, for all intents and purposes, it will be a 4G LTE phone that is capable of hotspotting 4G. But other than that, you're getting calls and text messages, and that's it. You can't even get in like photos on this thing. No social media, none of that. No media at all. I don't think. Just it's just a phone that can text. So at first, before I saw it physically, I was thinking like, oh, but like, how is this any different from just going and getting like an old school track phone at Walmart? And I'm like, oh, this sounds a lot like the phone I had as a kid. Right. As a kid, the Motorola flip phone, track phone from Walmart, because everyone had the Razor. That was the cool thing at the time. Are we dating ourselves with that? The Razor.
No. We're dating ourselves because they brought the Razor back for a hot second. You saw those commercials?
They did, yeah. But I'm like, I don't remember when the Razor 2 dropped, and it's like, it ain't the Razor 1. Like I ever had a Razor 1 to make that comparison.
That ain't the pink Motorola Razor.
Yeah.
You ain't shit, like Razor 2. You ain't shit.
Yeah, it was the pink one and the silver one. Like one of those two. Or some people had blue ones. I don't know. I didn't have one, so I'm talking like again, like I had one. But it is a little mind blowing to kind of like feel that we're in this point where Kendrick Lamar is coming out with what he's calling an extremely minimalist phone, and it looks and feels far more advanced than say like the phones of our childhood that only had those capabilities. You know what I mean? Like technically there was internet, but it wasn't internet. You know what I mean? It wasn't internet like you can't go on a web browser on those phones. It's like you could download things for your phone like ringtones. Right. Like, that's pretty much it.
The way that the internet was built out, like no website was built out with being compatible for like a mobile device because it just wasn't.
Right. Mobile, yeah. Mobile versions of websites didn't exist back then. So
there's just too much information at that point. Like the phone wasn't capable of doing it. I don't think the websites were you didn't want to waste any of the information that you were packing into a website.
Right. It's like,
smaller version of the website,
It's like, what are you really getting? Do you want just like a text list of like the links you can click on in the website? Like that's all that phone could handle. Like if you download like an image for like your background, you could barely tell what it was. It looked like it was a censored image.
Which it usually was.
Or it is. If you're Tyler, usually it was a censored image.
It was so censored it made you bite your phone and break
it. Or read it with the background.
Stop it.
Are you okay? Down here.
Yo, Read It Where just came on my phone the other day, like on like Spotify, and it just.
So then you came on your phone. No, sorry.
It took me back for a second. I was like, well, I haven't thought about Rita Ora in a minute because I made a Halloween playlist and it was Black Widow came on. So that was that song, Yeah, so what I'm gonna leave you with before we get into more of this light phone conversation is how
Yeah.
I got introduced to the light phone. So it was through one of those like Esquire GQ articles originally, right? The light phone had come out. It was this revolutionary concept. How do we break the mold from being way too consumed by our phone in the age of social media? And that was the concept. It was
Okay.
like it's strictly for calls, texts, and the next one was going to be GPS, which this one has, right? Um, and it was a cool idea in theory. Back then, the cost of it I thought was something like close to $1,000 or something like that. Like it was way too expensive.
It was like
Don't
it was
quote
like
me.
buying the newest model. Well, it was comparable to that. Would
Yeah,
you say?
that's what I thought at least. Like when I was reading it, and it was like not only was it at that cost, or even if it wasn't, even if it was something comparable to now, which was like $300 for this phone, right? Um, the the caveat back then was it wasn't serviced by any mobile carrier.
So you couldn't buy because you have to buy the phone basically unlocked. So
Yeah,
it wasn't you couldn't get a SIM to put into it to get a mobile carrier.
it needed to be connected to your phone. So you had to
You
be
mean
in a range of your actual phone.
so you still needed a phone?
And that was the major flaw of it was they for some reason it wasn't worked out prior like past that. Like
So
you
so it
had to
was
have
an
two
i
phones.
it was an iPod Touch. That's what it
No,
was. It was an iPod Touch.
except for like no apps.
Oh my god! And we're probably dating ourselves with iPod Touches
Yeah,
at this point.
but that
But
that's
like that's what an iPod Touch was.
and it's essentially what it was. Is like except for like at least an iPod Touch could like work without a phone on Wi-Fi.
Right. Right. So this couldn't
This
even do that.
this you had to be connected to your phone. So like you couldn't theoretically leave your phone behind and walk out the door with this. You needed that phone within like proximity.
Sorry, this is blowing my mind because I didn't know anything about this light phone before this,
Because it was something that I
and
wanted at one point.
the idea of it seems great. You know what I mean? For someone, especially who's actively looking to disconnect from social media and that type of thing. If it's something that you would like to do but seem to not be able to do,
So
having the not having the capability is like one of those things
so imagine
that seems
this.
to be sought after.
For me what it is, it's a great idea, especially in a work climate that doesn't want people on phones, right? But
Mm,
here's the big issue, right? How many how many jobs are actually providing you with a phone, right? Like who is actually providing you with your work phone? A lot of big corporations can afford to do that, but for like something
right.
like me where even I am required, like not required, but my job, like I post stuff on like social media and interact on social media, right? But I
But you're
use my
using your own
phone.
phone, right? Which for something like that, I feel like you should have your own device that's just that. I mean, just
But
like from a company's security standpoint,
but
you
I
know what I
know
mean?
exactly. But I know, yeah, I do cybersecurity trainings and then do this shit. Um, but even for like companies that like talk about productivity and like in the
Mm-hmm.
office and everything like that, and so they don't want you to be on your phone, or even if it was something as simple like maybe if it was only calls, right? Like for students. So you get
Yeah,
like going back to the track phone situation, like the middle school I work at, every when they go into school, they have to put their phones in a lockbox and they don't get their
really,
phone back until they leave the school. That shit's wild.
really.
That's wild to me.
That is completely, but it kind of feels like. Well, but here's the thing, though. I guess with that, just to tangent for a second on that. So maybe it is more necessary these days. Just trying to like look at it from today's perspective. Like we couldn't imagine that even in high school, because in high school we had the capability, apps were available to an extent, but you had to have the latest iPhone basically to get anything usable internet wise. Like it was still very, very in the early stages of that. So maybe at that point, it's like we could have our phones and we might be distracted texting the person next to us. but in a sense, that's kind of like a person-to-person personal interaction, and it's a distraction, but it's different than doom scrolling in the middle of class.
I can't imagine the doom scrolling in the middle of class. Like that's something like that's a little different to me because that's just like Instagram was like maybe college, but like.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, Instagram wasn't even a thing when we were in high school. You had Facebook,
right? Who's like no,
and that was
really,
relatively new.
Yeah. However, this is the thing though. If we go back to the light phone, but strictly like, I mean, even if the text is available on the light phone, if it's just text and it's just phone calls,
yeah.
You're not worried about students doing TikToks, all these other stuff. Like it's much easier.
Doing these bullshit dance challenges. The real reason our society is going downhill and COVID is to blame are these dance challenges on TikTok.
No, because when we were in middle school, we were cranking that Soldier Boy, and it is the exact same thing.
No. Because we didn't have the layer of the capability of doing the dance and then posting it immediately from your phone onto the internet for millions of people to give you attention.
Yeah, but
like that's different. It's just different.
Like,
plus, the amount of
collectively we're all showing off that we could do.
But the amount of technological effort it took to even post a video of you doing that. You waited at least until you got home to do that. You don't want to do that at school. You know what I mean? Like now it's just hit a button. Yeah, exactly.
Tyler, aren't you supposed to be doing work on the computer? Shut up.
It's like, and it's kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, texting is way easier now than it was for us who didn't have the fancy iPhones that had the screen thing yet.
Yo, can you imagine? I can't. I haven't even brought it up to these kids. Talking about minutes.
Oh my god! And if you had a track phone, minutes, because text counted as like fractions of minutes.
Do you remember the time where I accidentally texted $2,000 worth of messages in a billing cycle?
Remember this at all?
Oh yeah, because I remember like my phone went from not being able to send or receive messages to all of a sudden like, oh, I can send messages to people and I receive them back. I must have texting for some reason. I don't know. I'm not going to question this. Let me start texting my girlfriend. And so a whole shit ton of messages. And I'm at the park one day. And next thing I know, they're like, Tyler, your dad's looking for you. And I'm like, what's wrong? And like, you're going home. I'm just like, what the fuck did I do? And it was
oh my god,
I texted $2,000. I just got the bill. It's $2,000. I'm like, my phone went from no texting to texting. That wasn't me. That was your company. Like,
how did that end up?
They significantly reduced it, but I was in a lot of trouble.
Thank God. Thank God. And
I had to like pay it back. So
I was gonna say, like, the fact that you're alive today shows your dad's patience, because he could have ended you.
Yeah, this is when we were still on 4th Street. Like, so.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I was under 16 at the time. So.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I'm alive.
These kids will never understand. I had to go to the Walmart and buy a card that said 60 minutes. You got 60. And if you were lucky, you got the one that was 120 minutes. And you type the code in, and you had to wait a couple minutes to get your minutes. And then like a text was like 0.3 minutes to send out, but to receive one was another 0.3 minutes. So they made it so that it was like awkwardly more than a minute to get and to send a text and receive a response. So you always were off on minutes. It was a mess. You had to do like the weird double tap B, double tap 2 to get the D. Yeah, the T9 texting, which was almost like an art form at a point. Like it was like, and like it was kind of cool.
And you could eventually like train the phone to like, no, this is what I mean when I say
the very
65658.
Yeah, like the very, very basics of auto like fill in, auto text
There
fill
were
in.
memes that were like only our generation, only millennials will understand, and it's just a bunch of numbers. Like it's a series of numbers separated by each other. It's basically like send nudes, right?
That's funny. Yeah, like it's crazy how we went from that to just like, and we were behind. I think we were both behind the curve when it came to like the phone technology. Obviously, like
I didn't get an iPhone until I was working at the advertising agency because they wanted us to like test it on our phones, and to send from a Mac to a fucking Samsung took
yeah,
3
it didn't make
days.
sense.
But like if I
Yeah,
just airdropped it, you know,
all of a sudden it works fine
what a
because Mac.
privilege airdrop is. Like that's insane.
Yeah,
If I were to be told back in elementary school that there was going to be a device that just said, boop, here's a
you'd
picture.
have gone into tech. Yeah.
The fuck? I'm getting another
See,
beer.
you see why this is like dangerous. That's why they're locking the phones away for the kids
That makes
because
sense. But like you can't send shit in the school anyway. It's like walking into
the dead zone. You're in the
I
upside
went to
down.
Northwest Middle School that has like walls that are like 3 feet thick. You have no signal.
Yeah, yeah. That's the other crazy thing. Like you couldn't use your phone in there anyway.
Well, and like let's put it in perspective. Where I work at this middle school with these fucking thick ass walls, I don't have internet access, right? Like I don't have a dedicated Wi-Fi for me. I don't have a login. So the login that I was using expired, so I can't get into that anymore. So I have to use my hotspot. So the way I work is thankfully I'm in a room that's close to a window. I put my hotspot on, take my phone, and put it near the window so that it
Jesus,
has better signal so that I can access the internet.
is there? It's not worth the effort, but whatever, like the line extender thing could work if you needed it to, but also
No.
it's not worth the
I
effort.
would need access to the school district internet.
Yeah, which you don't have.
That's the issue.
Yeah,
Once I get that, because
exactly.
when I had that, it's okay. I would still have to go on the hotspot if I needed to like use a certain app that was blacklisted for some reason by the administration, right? Fine,
Right.
whatever. That makes sense. But yeah, it's still it's a hot mess, and it goes into the like what is being provided by workforce versus what's not being provided by workforce, which I think is a good transition into the back half of this conversation because Kendrick is like really advocating this because of the productivity, the focus, the deviation from social media. And so maybe that's the conversation we have after I get my beer is, the
And me
benefits
too.
of disconnecting, right? So I'm going to
Yeah.
transition us back into our logo. And then once we're both
Yeah.
back with our beers, we're going to get back into the conversation. So enjoy this commercial break without a commercial. So thank you for our no partners for that commercial.
Thank you to the alternative blacks for that.
I'm the alternative.
It's the alternative.
Yeah,
alternative.
Tell me how, before we get into the conversation about our beer and then back into this life home, tell me how one of my kids at the high school said to me, Tyler, you shaved your beard. You look white. You look like your name should be Timothy. And it took me until I got back home, and I was just. It took me.
See, it's just.
I got back home, and I was sitting down, and I was thinking about it. I was like, I already have a white name. Why did you give me another white name?
Wait, but it's not just the Timothy. Timmer. How much? So Timmy's your alter ego.
Yeah,
well, you also have Trevor. You have Trevor.
Trevor Timoteo.
So we all this whole time, everyone just knew you looked like Timmy underneath that beard.
Yo, that was the craziest thing, though. They were just like, and then the one student was just like, your voice doesn't even match your face anymore. Like, I just don't know how to take this. And I was just like, you don't have to.
Yeah, it's not for you to take.
But so we got more beer. Did you switch up your beer, or are you still drinking the same thing?
Drinking the same thing, baby. Elder Pine.
Well, that's good, because I too am drinking Elder Pine. So the first
Hell
thing,
yeah.
One of the first things I want to talk to you about with Elder Pine is their label art, and their like this shimmering gold is
it's so satisfying to.
I think that's what brought us in for the first time to Elder Pine. And then we found out how close, like, not close, it's like 2 hours, but like how close it is to us. But
yeah, 2 hours for you. What's it for me though?
We had talked about on an episode, like, how do you approach beer? How do you decide what beer to drink? Because of the plethora of like options, it can be overwhelming. And one of the approaches was, well, find something that visually draws you in. And if there's ever a beer that I would talk to about visually appealing and just bringing me in every single time, it's an Elder Pine can.
I thoroughly agree with that. Like, and you know what it is, like, when you get a good design and you just stick with the template of that design, like they always have this nice gold label for the name of it. It's so distinct. You know what you're looking at. Yeah, like the gold is so clean. Yeah. Like, and like for yours, so they have the two logos, right? Because this is like my beer has, this is like their full logo, but then they have the EP that Tyler has, and it's just like so iconic, so clean, and you get like the beer breakdown always, and it's always like the same thing, very clean. You know where to look for information. Yeah. So you're never wanting for that. And then like the art is always so eye-catching. It's usually dark. All of it's like this hand-drawn feel to it. Like it's just everything about it just is iconic to me. And so I always like, besides the fact that the beer is delicious,
it looks like a old-fashioned wood print, right?
Yeah.
It looks like, and it's masterfully done. It's very intentional. I think they went with the woodblock print because, again, we're talking about Elder Pines. I thought it was just a cool name until I went out and I checked the spot, and then we were sitting in this like mini forest of pine, and we're looking up at seeing how tall these pine trees were. And I'm talking about like half of it's like gone, like all of the pines are like off of it until it's the top of the tree. Those are still there. And it's just like looking up, and it has to be the same feeling of being like in the redwood forest, right? Like those like.
So you looked up at those pines, you're like, damn, those are some old pines right there.
Yeah,
these ain't no young pines.
No, they elder.
Yeah, these ain't youngin' pines. They're elder.
So it's very unassuming. It's in like this back road in Maryland. Mm-hmm. You know, you're just driving, and eventually you just come upon Elder Pines, and it's a huge campus.
What a great place to stumble upon, by the way.
Look, I went to the wedding, and I was like, I'm gonna see what like brewery is on the way back home, and I usually try to keep very close to the highway that
The
I'm going to be
route.
driving
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
And I just did the search, and obviously it like backs you up first, and then I look at the
Yeah.
road, and it backed me up, and then I saw the name pop up, and I said, okay, I don't care if this is the opposite direction. How far in the opposite direction? Because that's going to dictate it. Am I going to spend an
Yeah.
hour going in the wrong way, or and what happened? So
Right.
it was half an hour in the right direction, and
Oh,
I was
that is
like,
clutch. That is so clutch.
I was like, when does it open? And it was like it was going to be open after the wedding. I was like, oh my gosh! It's like I'm going.
You get out of the car. Oh,
And it was cool. Like you saw the food truck when you first pulled in, then the facility. They had an outside bar as well. They had seating outside of the Pines. They had seating in the Pines. There were two artists in the parking lot painting a motorcyclist on his motorcycle. Just doing like it was weird, but it was a fun environment. There was this really cool, like really cute dog that was sitting behind the bar outside. That just was really sweet and friendly. It was just a good place. It was a lot of fun.
yeah. Plus
There,
the beer.
plus the beer is incredible. The merchandise left something to be desired, but hey, that's not honestly.
That's the last
That's the
thing,
last
honestly.
thing. Like I look for it. I want it. I love a place with a good gift shop. I think Trogs has a crazy good gift shop.
That they do.
But it doesn't make or break a place for me. Like I'll go back to a brewery that doesn't have anything to sell. They might not even have a fucking sticker or a coaster, and I will go back if the beer is good, if everything else is good.
Yeah. I don't care about the. I don't care about. So we were because we just talked for like 5 minutes about how great the labeling is and the marketing is. If the beer sucked, this wouldn't matter. You know what I
No, we
mean?
would have
Like
had to be
you
like,
like
damn,
the beer.
that's eye catching, but never again.
Yeah, like you got us once, Elder Pie, but
Yeah,
you're not
damn
going to get
you,
us again.
yeah,
Yeah.
you fuckers. There's only
But
one place where the swag has ever mattered before the quality of the beer, and it's not even that
where's this?
it's not even that the quality of the beer is bad. It was just it was so unattainable for so long that the culture behind the brewery was more important. Crowns and
Mm,
hops.
yeah, agreed.
The
Fully
only
agreed. But
brewery,
but the beer was good.
but the beer backs it up.
Yeah.
So that's
But
the
the beer
scary
backs
part.
up. You got to have the product, right? And that's just general business, you know. I mean, you got to have the product, and then the marketing brings you into the product. But if the product sucks, the marketing could be amazing. You're still only going to go so far with it. So
Yeah. So
I don't fault them for that personally.
so to before we get into the end of our conversation, this Tamave Pivo, Tamave Pivo, Tamav.
My people, I don't
Um,
know. It's probably some weird way to say it that we're screwing up,
yeah,
huh?
for sure. But it's a Czech style dark lager. So everything that you like about a pilsner or anything like that, but with the depth of I would say like a stout, right? So here, this is National Stout Day, by the way. So this actually makes a lot of sense to me right now. Reason why I don't like stouts as much, I think, or maybe it's porters. Maybe I do like stouts. I always confuse the fucking two. One of them I find to
They're,
be
the line's so gray,
yeah.
just lump them together.
One
Yeah.
of them I find to be a little more like watery and not have a lot of like depth of
Hmm.
flavor behind. Like the mouthfeel just like leaves something to be desired. And this is the better side of that because it is lighter. It does have that watery mouthfeel, but because of it's lending itself towards a lager and that kind of that reminiscent of a like pilsner and everything like that, it's a welcomed switch to what you're used to in terms of the grain build
Yeah.
of the beer. This is a lot like it lends itself to those rich flavors, but not being so heavy, and so it makes it a
Right.
very approachable beer. But when I do think about stouts and porters and stuff like that, I do want that depth. I do want that heaviness in that mouthfeel. I want it to like one of the things I don't like about the Yingling chocolate porter is the fact that
Hmm.
it's like it is a water. It's like having watery Hershey's chocolate in a glass to me.
Is that so? Cause I've never had it, so I don't.
And I would have to try it again. I might be describing it wrong. It was like 2 years after it
But
originally came out.
I can imagine it though, dude, because like to get a beer that thick without like to the point where if it's like okay, chocolate porter, so you're essentially making chocolate like hot chocolate, right? So how do you get there?
Chocolate milk.
Or like so how do you get there without making it watery? Because what we normally think of hot chocolate, you're adding milk to it. So if you're not having milk in it, it's just grain water.
But this is why I tend to find myself like the imperial like stouts or whatever that Prince Michigan is that Dock Street does. That is where I want my dark beer to be at, because and it ends up usually being a more boozy flavored or just a boozier beverage in general, because that's the like weight to it that I'm looking for. Is I'm never looking at something this dark. This might be in the exception to be a beer or a Rausch beer maybe, to be something that I feel comfortable having another and another and another. You know, like it's almost like for lack of better term,
I agree with that.
Like a Guinness is something I can continue drinking all day, but I don't necessarily want to be drinking Guinness all day.
No, you could, but you don't want to, and I agree with that. And I think part of that is one quickly because I looked it up. Tamabe Pivo literally is dark beer in Czech. So that being said, that's just literally the name for the style of a Czech dark lager. But the fact that it's a lager, I think, is really what does it.
That's the saving grace for me, I think.
Yeah, like I do think it, because porters and stouts are ales.
Right.
So you're having ale yeast, and it does change the flavor profile a little bit, I think. And to be completely honest, like as long as you have really good malt, I feel like you can make any dark beer work. But I mean, me personally, and I think generally I'm more generally into dark beer overall than you are. Yeah. It would be my guess.
That's very fair.
Yeah. But I think I'm also more seasonal than you are. I'm like way more seasonal leaning. So like I haven't had a dark beer yet this year, like that I bought and have in my fridge. But now that it's getting cold, it's going to be all dark beer for the rest of the year, basically.
I know what it is. I have an addictive personality, right? So when I find something that I like, I just want it all the time. Like so it's not my personality that's addictive. It's my personality lends itself to having addictive tendencies, right? So it's like if I find a song I like, say Open Letter, right? That's all I'm fucking listening.
This explains everything.
Right. No. Like I knew this example was going to be perfect for you. But so, for instance, like I really like Oktoberfests. And if I could drink an Oktoberfest all year round, it would easily be my top beer. Like a Marzen would be my top beer on Untapped. But it's just not there. It's not available. So it's not that I'm not I'm not seasonal, because I would drink it all year. There's just select seasons that I have like leaned into. And it just happens to be fall because it's the Marzens, it's the Rausch beers, like the smokiness stuff. Like fall beers are my go-to beers outside of hoppy beers. But then that's why you also see those imperial like stouts and stuff like that, and the barley wines and stuff like that. The reason why those are like not too far after my IPAs in terms of my preferred styles of beers is because during the winter months, that's what I fucking gravitate to, and it just happens to be more readily available. So I'm not seasonal in the sense of like, oh, this changes really much. It's just the fact that it's just not available. my
true.
And aren't available as much.
And to be fair, like obviously, I think even we caught the tail end of this when we were starting to get into craft beer. Like it was very seasonal. Like breweries still do this. Like the larger breweries, you have a rotation of season. Like you have your base set of brews. Like Trogs, for example, is the best example of this. Like you have your base beers. Those are always going to be available. You're always going to have perpetual. That's why it's called perpetual. You know, you're always going to have Sunshine Pills. What's their the Storm King?
Yeah.
No, Storm King is Victory, I think.
Yeah.
What's the Troganator? Troganator.
Because I say like even some of those things like Victory was one of those that I thought I could rely on more, and I can't because I feel like Hop Devil's not in the rotation the way it used to be.
You know what? You're kind of right. Like I see Dirt Wolf a lot more than I see Hop Devil, and I'm fine with that because You're right. Maybe that's just a popularity thing. Like I feel like Dirt Wolf is probably Golden Monkey is their most popular beer.
Hop Devil would have been Victory's perpetual though.
Yeah, I'd agree. I agree with that, but I far prefer perpetual. Honestly,
same. It was one of those things that I grew up seeing Hop Devil so much that at this point in my life, the fact that Hop Devil is a strange occurrence to me, just like leads me to ask why.
That's true. That's true because like we would always have like Hop Devil if we go to a place or Dirt Wolf if we're feeling a little more boozy, you know. So if we're feeling frisky, we'll go for or a Golden Monkey. Like for real, those are like the three, right? Because the Hop Devil's the IPA, then you have the double with Dirt Wolf, and then a Belgian triple, which is like a complete opposite thing. But to kind of round it back around with this conversation on darkness, I think the lager portion really helps. The lager portion really helps darkness. The lager portion does, I think, help the fact that it's like the Czech style. I think a European style works well for a dark beer because you're going to have less hoppiness to it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be more focused on getting the malts really well and balancing that. So you're just going to have a more balanced beer, you know? So I would be excited to try it. I am excited to try it. I don't think I like thinking more about it. I don't think I've had this particular Czech beer from Elder Pine. I think I've had their Czech Pilsner, which is also something Pivo.
Yeah.
And yeah, amazing. But
so that being said, I gotta run to the facilities because I haven't built one down here yet. All
right. Well, Tyler runs to the loo. I will regale you.
That sink over there is just unfortunately within camera view. No.
You didn't set this up properly.
No, I'm gonna run up, but the conversation I want to jump into when I get back, so you can fill it in with a precursor to that, or you can fill in with some more thoughts about Czech dark lagers. Is where does the light phone or this like disconnect from social media have a place? And I think that's where I wanted to go with the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll be right back.
All right. And I will wait till you're back. Gonna wait till Tyler gets back to dive into that subject specifically because the way he brought it up, I think he has a different take on it than I do necessarily. Maybe it's tangential, but separate takes regardless. For anyone who's listening, let us know what your favorite dark beer is. Are you seasonal? Do you tend towards porters or stouts? Do you care about the difference? Can you tell us the difference honestly at this point? Or do you like a nice dark lager? I think we both enjoy something a little more malty in general, which is why we tend towards the Oktoberfest when it starts to get colder. 2 weeks ago in our last live, we discussed pumpkin ales and that seasonality and how pumpkin ales kind of have their time, and it's almost like a flash in the pan each year where you get blasted with pumpkin for maybe a month and then it's gone forever, and it's quickly replaced by the wintry spiced ales. So yeah, let us know. Let us know what you guys are into during the winter months. Do you go towards a Mad Elf? How do you feel about Mad Elf? Do you have a particular winter warmer type beer that you go to? Is it dessert stout time? I know dessert stouts are one of those things that are very popular, or at least they were very popular. And me being not much of a sweets person, I could take or leave a dessert stout. I have to really be in the mood for one, but just a good standard like imperial stout, like maybe like an imperial Russian stout. Uh, there's Tyler to save me. Imperial Russian stout, I think, would be like a very solid thing to go to over like a dessert stout in the wintertime. I think dessert stouts are very play it by ear
I've never
on
really
how you
got in.
feel.
Yeah, I never really got into like the pastry stout like scene and like the dessert stout.
Yeah,
There was a
that's what I
red
was gonna
velvet
say.
stout that I really enjoyed. I don't remember where it's from. Um,
The
yeah.
Oakbrook White Russian was good. The
Oh
White Russian stout, that was good.
that was one of my favorites.
That was
Um,
good.
so
And Dragon's Milk is always good. But other than that, it's kind of like I could take or leave a stout
yeah, so you had
or
mentioned
like
like
a dessert stout.
if anybody is watching, let us know how they feel.
Yes.
I think what I'm gonna start doing because I did it. I was listening on the app as I went upstairs. And I was looking at like some of the latest stats. Not great, but I think what I'm looking at now, especially, I think getting this place was really a blessing in disguise. Not that getting the place wasn't a blessing in the first place, but as I'm taking care of projects and getting more accustomed to things, it's the old cycle was get an apartment, go through the unpacking and getting adjusted phase, find that, and then start looking for the next place and go through that cycle again. And like now it's like, oh, we're building stuff into a way that it's going to be a lot longer lasting than other things. So building up routines actually are different routines. So like my commute's going to be a consistent routine versus oh, now how long does it get me to get there? Or how long does it get me and so what I'm finding is now, as I'm getting a little more accustomed to that, I'm getting a better understanding of where does that free, say, even if I dedicated like an hour, where does that hour exist that I can really like bump into getting us back to kind of where we were at. And we knew this might be a hard transition going from Instagram to um,
Yeah.
YouTube, which is actually a really good way to segue into this last part of the conversation because we're talking about a phone that transitions you away from the channel that we found a lot of success in to doing something that's a little more dedicated and a little more intentional, and that's what this is. So like what does intentionality start looking at in a world that we demanded access to things in our pocket and now we are too accessible and it doesn't provide efficiency or productivity, because I think that's the counterbalance, right? you
Yeah.
we always need to find that counterbalance of, oh, do we always need to be productive? No. But do we always need to be distracted by something either, right? So how do we balance this all? And I think that's where this light phone offers a really enlightening conversation.
Oh, does no. I agree. I agree with the fact that there is like the intentionality portion of it. Like you with the light phone, you have something that is disconnecting you from the world in a sense, the world as we know it today. But I think for us, it's something that it's kind of going back to something that we knew when we were younger. in childhood. Like we still can conceptualize that idea. How does someone who was born in an era where all of this was already a thing disconnect from that? And so I say that to say, we brought up earlier how I'm never on social media really. Like the social media that I consume is YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the social media aspect of YouTube either. It's completely disconnected from anyone I know personally. It's fairly disconnected from individuals in a sense, like streamers even. Like I don't there are certain streaming channels that I might watch for different purposes, informational purposes, but like it's not something where I feel like I have access to this person like a normal social media. And YouTube is one of those things because it came up before that split where that meld where everything is now social
That's
media.
actually a really interesting point, and there's a really
Yeah.
interesting example that I'm going to bring up about that too. But I have always enjoyed the way that you have consumed YouTube because it's not even as much of a. There was very rare cases where you were watching a channel to learn something, in terms of like my main consumption of YouTube outside of like music videos and stuff like that was like, okay, how do I get better at like editing and stuff like that? And like, here's like some very like intentional things.
So you go onto YouTube like I need to watch a tutorial video on this.
Right. It's like, oh, I want to
Go look at
like
the
I
tutorial.
found very specific like
Yeah.
YouTubers who do things in a specific way, and I like figure like I would watch that, learn from that, and gain a few things. Right. Um, that was a very intentional use case. I watched videos for like music videos as well, but that's again going back to like the profession that I was at, right? Um, and then there would be like maybe some like cocktail videos that I would like watch, right? That was very
Yeah.
intentional. But then, you know, you watched a few like I know you had like recap videos of sports or like commentary on sports and stuff like that you had listened to in the past. That was like one of the things
Yeah,
that
that's a
you
big
enjoyed.
thing. That's a big thing. Transitioning away from like having to watch full sport talk
Right.
shows where it's the same recycled stuff all the time. Instead, I could be like, I know this happened and I prefer this person or these people talking about it. I'm going to look up this clip and then I see this clip and it's
So,
just 5 minutes.
but
Boom,
you
and
had
I'm
also
out.
done like when like Lonnie went to the NBA, right? For people that don't know, Lonnie Walker out of Reading, PA.
How do you not know?
Right. Goes to Miami,
Go
goes
watch
to
a
LA
Brooklyn game.
Spurs, goes to the Lakers, goes to the Brooklyn, right? Who just beat the Heat. Um, but
My
one of the things that
apologies.
nah, it's fine. One of the things that I enjoyed about you and like you brought it to my attention too was just like, everyone can say why isn't he getting more minutes, blah 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 blah, but they're watching highlights. They're not watching like every minute. And like you were
Mm-hmm.
watching like certain clips of like, oh, I want to see the highlights, not even the highlights. I want to see the recap of a certain player, but it wasn't for the highlights. It was literally just to see how were they
Yeah,
performing.
the full
Not only
play.
did you say you didn't see the shot that they made, but you saw the 13 shots they didn't make prior. How
Yeah, no,
bad of a take it was.
and see that's like so, and I feel like it almost shows up in like my music selection too.
Right.
And this might be more relatable because I think that's probably something that we've talked about more. Is like my music selection and the artists that I listen
Yeah.
to
Very
more so on
intentional.
a regular basis. Like it's not mainstream. It's extremely not mainstream. In fact, like Kendrick Lamar is the most mainstream person that I would say I
But
regularly like.
but he's the one like he's one of the very few
But
like
he's
how do you let a conscious nigga go mainstream, right? Like that's like his whole take.
yeah. So it's like you have that. Like I'm really into like Danny Brown, JPEG Mafia, that melding of the two, which is like chaotic amazingness.
Yeah.
And it's just like all not catchiness, it's all not trendiness. And I think I don't know why, but that's like maybe it's like the analytical thing where it's not about, yeah, I don't know. But then also, I mean, also at the same time, like I thoroughly enjoy Afrobeat, and I think that's more of my like wanting to kind of get back to my roots in a sense, a little bit with that, and like just kind of feeling that energy. But everything else, like the energy is just very like different, than say like a mainstream. And then it's kind of the same like with the YouTube consumption. It's just like there are a lot of like for people who do consume YouTube a lot, there are mainstream YouTubers who are huge. I don't really watch many of those things at all. In fact, I don't watch anything particularly religiously on YouTube. Besides maybe like the sports talk show types. Yeah, but like the sports talk show type stuff, I do like me some first things first clips. But clips, once again, like it's just clips for the most part. Clips of that. I'll do clips of like music reviews or music reactions are cool because it's almost like you're hanging out with a person listening to something for the first time. That's cool. But it's like it's all not this person to person. Like I don't feel like I have personal access to this person like I would with a true social media like Instagram or Facebook.
So it's really that's a really interesting like take because
yeah,
a lot of, especially like in the field of like looking at marketing and looking at advertising and everything like that, people don't tend to buy based off of brands as much as they do off of people or individual. Like they'll somebody will sooner buy into a person than they will buy into a brand. They need that connection, right? That's why you see brands be successful, like Nike with Michael or Nike with LeBron, right? Like you see how like Puma had an uptick with J. Cole or Meek, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where like that buy-in is, right? And that's where you saw this rise of social media influence, where influencers really take a rise. And so like for you to have that almost complete counterculture is really interesting and really cool. Now, with this light phone and the idea behind it, especially coming from, it's not coming from an average Joe like you or me, like which a light phone from any other person would be kind of seen as that counterculture or seen as that hipster take into, I just want my like track phone and like that's how you get into me. This is my minimalist lifestyle. But when you see somebody like Kendrick get into it, there's an influence element there. And it's this intentionality. It's this almost like archetype now of productivity. It would have been, for lack of better term, like not better terms, but like to use as an example, it would be like if Warren Buffett said, "Oh, this is the phone that I use," or if it was Steve Jobs, like, or even like fucking Elon Musk, right? If he were to be like, or Mark Cuban or somebody like that to be like fucking Joe Rogan, saying like, oh, outside of doing this podcast, I just use my light phone because it allows me to intentionally focus on tasks. So that's where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I guess Joe Rogan and the fact that he's influential, but
so my question to you though is like, what are the cons, like the pros and cons to this idea?
Okay.
And then
so I think personally the pros are easier. Yeah. From the aspect of like, to me, I would buy this phone with a purpose. And that purpose is disconnect. Like I don't have the ability when I started trying to lose weight, years ago when I got out of college, we were first going to the gym and I was over 300 pounds.
You were getting stronger because I was getting stronger.
Exactly. But I wasn't losing weight, even though we were both stronger, that we could tell from each other. So I was like, well, what do I do? And like, it's like, well, you have to eat better. That's way more important than the physical fitness aspect in terms of losing weight. So how do you do that? Okay, well, I'm horrible at personally limiting myself. So if there are chips in the house, they will be eaten. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter that I'm working on having a better diet. If it's available, I will consume it. So
you have a little bit of an addictive personality too. Okay, cool.
Yeah. No, completely
When
on
it comes
board
to
with that.
food.
Yeah, because it's just like if it's there, I'm going to eat it. And sometimes it's not even about. Sometimes it's just like I could eat right now. Am I hungry? No, but I want the taste of it, so I'm just going to eat.
That's
And then you
bingo.
eat, and you get to the point where you only stop when you're like, ugh, I don't feel good at all now. Yeah. So it's like I have that. So I could, instead of a lot of people be like, oh, well, I'm just gonna willpower that away. No, why? That's who you are, that's what I am.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. Instead, what I'm gonna do is I refuse to buy anything that isn't like something that I need to prepare to eat, or just
if I am willing to
straight up
prepare it to consume it,
yeah, then you were hungry.
yeah,
right? If you're willing to prepare it, you were hungry. And I don't just mean thrown in the microwave for a minute.
right.
I mean like you have to get it out, you have to cut it up maybe, you have to grab a pan out, you have
Not
to turn
having a microwave?
the flame on. Now having a microwave would actually step up a lot of that. Like I could honestly buy things that are microwavable necessarily, but
I mean, I have this ramen here. Like ramen at the other house, like at the apartment, um, with a microwave, it's getting consumed because it takes 7 minutes, like to microwave or whatever. Fine, but it still is like as easy as putting it in the water, putting in the like thing, and walking away. Versus like now, I intentionally it's downstairs. I have to go all the way downstairs to get the package, walk upstairs, boil a pot of water, put that
yeah.
in, and it's just like, do I feel like going downstairs for this package? No.
Yeah. And in a way, it's better when you think about it, because in a way, it's like, okay, well, I have this pre-made ramen, okay, but normally the way it's supposed to be consumed is just like throw it in the microwave, throw the packet of seasoning and dehydrated peas in it, and there it is. There's your ramen. Now it's like, okay, well, I have to actually put effort into making this. So I'm gonna spruce it up.
Well, yeah,
I have some chicken left over. I'm gonna throw in some chicken or beef or whatever.
Egg.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm already in the kitchen working. I might as well
hard boiled egg, and so it's. Do I feel like doing the work for the hard boiled egg in order to make my
like? Do I have hard boiled egg energy? Nah. Okay, I'm just gonna.
And that honestly, that comes into it like it was one of the things going back was my mom would always comment about how much soda I drank. This is back when I was in like high school and middle school. But when she thought about it more, because I brought it to her attention too, I was just like,
it's there.
I'm not buying it.
Well, it's like you always had Dr. Pepper. Like it kills. Using cases of Dr. Pepper. I'm just like
I'm not buying it. It's here.
Like we just have it.
If I think, I could use a Dr. Pepper, and there's a cold Dr. Pepper, yeah,
you're gonna have a Dr. Pepper.
The Dr. Pepper, but the Dr. Pepper's not here. Like when I left, like, and actually once my mom stopped buying it, like I didn't consume it as much. Shit, Philly has a fucking soda tax. Like I do not buy soda often in Philly because not only is it like sickening to me anymore, but it's also way too expensive. I could buy a fucking club. We have seltzer all the time, and that actually that does it for me now. But it's yeah.
I still can't. I can't do it. I don't know what it is.
But it's all of those things. So the positive element of this light phone is making that harder step. Like if I had to do Instagram solely on the computer.
Especially like Instagram.
I could be doing so many other things. I could be on YouTube watching a wonderful show like the Alternative Blacks podcast. I could be doing so many different things versus like just scrolling through Instagram. And it's not an enjoyable app on the phone. I don't like Facebook that much. Like there's not many like.
Exactly. I'm on Facebook once in a blue moon.
Yeah. All these things, I might
Twitter,
be drinking
X, whatever the fuck it is
on Facebook. Like,
once in a blue moon.
Right. But so there's those elements of it that just don't like work in terms of social media, and if which is odd because the way social media was prior to like mobile social media was MySpace, was instant.
I was gonna say you had to go on the computer. It was like, okay, I'm gonna go log on to the computer. I hope no one else is using it at the time, so I can use it.
Yeah.
And then you're on there.
So
it's very good. It's not as it wasn't as accessible.
Right. So here's the
Now it is.
of the light phone. Now, where I am very concerned in these last 9 minutes before this, I hope the game actually didn't start already. Last time I watched the game and they won, I was painting my room, so maybe it's better than.
I was gonna say, do you want to see a 3-and-out by the Steelers in the first quarter? I don't think you care about that.
That already happened. Okay. So we're like 3 minutes in. Anyways, we're wrapping this up so I can go up and watch. But
yeah,
what I am worried about is that stupid grind mentality where it's just like, well, if you're not like grinding all the time, you aren't dedicated in what you're doing and blah blah blah. So what I always am mindfully like pessimistic about is I would hate for like it to almost become like, and I don't know how it would actually happen, and so like my fear might be a little misguided, but like the big push from businesses, the big push from education spaces, and like all this other stuff is like to push the light phone as the only thing that's acceptable in the workplace. So like, mind you, like how my middle school works, where you have to come in and drop off. I can't imagine going into work and like, unless you have a light phone, you have to drop your phone off when you get into work.
So crazy, because that's not even something I considered, because I don't have a phone for work, so I'd never considered that. Touche on that, because my initial thought, honestly, thought to your con was, I think the pro outweighs the con in the sense that I don't think it's necessarily a productivity thing when it comes to at least Kendrick and what he wants, because if you listen to the album, it's more about mental health and where his mental space has been. And the fact that the effects of social media had such a horribly negative effect that he just coiled up and wanted to go away. And that's what he did. That's why he wasn't around. And so he doesn't see social media as being a positive aspect of his life. It's a net negative to his mental health, because you're on there, you're comparing yourself to other people, there's toxicity here left and right. There's good stuff, sure, but there's plenty of bad stuff as well. It only averages out to be, normal. And unfortunately, you get hit with bits of the negativity as well as the positivity on both ends. And us as people, the negativity hits harder than the positivity 90% of the time.
Right.
So it's just mentally difficult. So for a mental standpoint, I'm like, this phone, for people who are just like, I need to disconnect and I can't on my own willpower, so I will get this phone to force me to disconnect.
Love it.
That's great. But in terms of businesses taking control of that and taking advantage of it, that's something I didn't think of, and I completely agree with what you said. So wow.
It's just like it's one of those things, and maybe I've worked in too many toxic like situations where it's like wanting to have complete control over things as well, and seeing like, so my big thing is like, I forget what the Japanese word or like the mindset is, where it's you work a dedicated amount of time and then you have like another dedicated amount of time to like unwind from all that, right? And I think that is maybe the perfect balance of like, work hard for an hour, debrief for half an hour, work hard for an hour, debrief for half an hour.
Yeah.
Like something like that, right? That makes sense. But in the culture that like most capitalist like societies would want you to do it, like I mean, like the fact that we're still not, thank God most people aren't working more than 40 hours a week, because that's 100% how they would like it to be, right? Or at least, the fact that it is required that bus drivers have to like pull over after X amount of hours, or truck drivers or anything like that, because of unions and anything, and like that's the beautiful element of that's the real worry about, as we become more reliant on using technology, like watching The Office again and just like seeing the episodes where they get taken over by Saber and like, oh, they're installing a block on other sites that we deem as like productivity, like blockers. And it's just like immediately taking the trust away from all of that too, and like all that type of stuff. That's where things become like, oh, at what point does being too fixated on productivity actually prevent productivity? Because then all you're doing is instilling like resentment. You're instilling like if there's a lack of willingness to go in or feel like a lack of freedom to do your job, I think that's where you end up seeing like productivity actually go down. So that's where 100%
agree.
That's where my fears will always subside, and that's where everything will always come from. It's like, okay, cool, I see the benefit, but like looking at it as a way of like a very micromanaging, overshadowing force. How could this be utilized incorrectly? And that's how I see
it. And sadly enough, like that's exactly how you have to think about it when you're faced with companies like you've had to work with before. Absolutely. It's completely logical, and hopefully something like this wouldn't be used for that. Unions are an important thing to fight stuff like that, but I think the potential benefits of this as a novel product just are so great. Go ahead and buy one. Go ahead and buy one if you're feeling like you need to disconnect.
Yeah.
Or as a work phone, honestly, if you need it as a work phone.
Yeah. I mean, and because of the price point of it, I think it is a really interesting like alternative. I think it allows, if it works well for the texting and calling, and like service isn't really an issue and anything like that, and that's what it's meant to be. Because I like the fact that like even email is kind of pretty limited.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
it's
text me on my work phone that like, hey, I need you to look at an email, and I will go look at the email. But like, don't expect me to be like, I don't want to be at dinner with my like significant other and expected to like receive that because I have this thing that allows me to see an email. That
absolutely.
It's like
absolutely.
The best case scenario is it allows me to do my job more effectively during those parameters, and then I can put this away.
That completely 100% agree. And the fact that that's not even something I even remembered or considered with this article is the fact that even emails slightly is limited to an extent. Now, if you have that happening, if these were to become work phones, which obviously they're cheap, so if you're going to buy in bulk a smartphone for your workplace, like this is it, right? To have a limited email but still have the email capabilities, but it's not, maybe you have to go through steps and you don't get like it's harder to do.
So
that would be great. That would be like a great win for employees.
Yeah. So like
you know what I mean?
Site-based staff, right? Like, okay, so there's even if we're just like looking at leadership team, right? We have 4 site directors and me, right? So if it's $300, we're looking at $1,500. It's not that bad. I don't know what the monthly fee is for like the actual service, but $1,500 to spend one time just to get everyone the device, not bad. Maybe upper management too. We add another 3 on top of that, so you went from 5 to 8. So what is that? 2,400? I don't know.
5 times 8 or 8 times.
8 times.
That'd be 8 times. 8 times 3 would be 24. Yeah.
Yeah. And then plus whatever the monthly fee is, right? They went out and bought us like $150 like work lights for like whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but they got like 12 of those or something like that, and that's very close to 16. So they could have easily spent the work phone capability for us, right? And it's just one of those things like we're constantly expected to like, yeah, it makes sense like to dedicate like a very cheap alternative to what it could be. Like even if you got someone a Samsung Galaxy or something like that, it's expensive. You got someone an iPhone. There's obviously already those expenses thought about it before you even going into actually servicing these things. So it makes sense. It is hit the 8:31 point, so I'm gonna go watch the Stillers. You know, we've already been drinking up Ian's bitches, but
drink up Ian's bitch. That's such a great shirt.
But no, this was a fun conversation.
Lots of fun, yeah.
I'm really excited to get back into a more dedicated alternative black podcast like experience, building it out a little more. And so, there's a lot in the future. It's one of those things, we're coming up on January, so New Year's resolutions, but I see a lot of positive things happening in the future.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. So these lives are great. A lot of fun, but it's just like every time it's like, damn, I wish we had more time to debrief. The physical distance is tough.
Yeah.
For this type of thing, but we'll get it figured out. We'll get you guys more content, And until next time, Steelers.
No, I mean,
Ian's bitches.